this 50 marker, the last one I really wanted to look at today. Although you've got a nice 25 marker down here as well, and I think one of the ones on this page was also, yeah, the 15 marker here is also worth a look if you guys have time. No worries, Krishna. Take care. Have a good week. So this one here, explain the main problems for an economy of having a large positive output gap. We wanted to look at this one specifically because we tackled output gaps very recently, and we said the positive output gap is the one that's really difficult to wrap your head around. And this is a bit trickier, even trickier, because we're talking about the problems of a positive output gap, which might not seem so obvious. But Devian's straight in there with one of the problems. Anyone else? Because I was going to ask you guys what might the basic problems of a large positive output gap be? Yes, good. Positive output gap is when the actual the actual output is greater than the potential, or you could say greater than the ideal. But the definition is the potential. Yash has said unsustainable. Great work, Yash. Yep, that's a really good way of looking at it. It's a problem in terms of whether you can sustain it. It might not be negative in the short term, but it could be a long-term problem, basically. Devian has said straight away inflation, which should be, that's the easy route. For any of you not thinking that, that was the easy route, and that suggests you want to sort of really make sure you have an understanding of what the output gap says about the state of the economy, right? And the really easy way to think of this is with the trade cycle diagram, again, horribly drawn. There's your trend line or your potential long-term growth. That's your actual. When you have a positive output gap, that's like this period when the actual is above the potential. Let me color that in. You have high growth, high employment, but you typically are going to have high inflation. And what am I doing? It's like am I drawing a circle? No, I'm drawing a tick. Sorry, guys. This is definitely not what's supposed to happen. I've lost the ability to I just want to do a line. I just want to do a simple line. Okay. I think I give up. But okay. Yeah, I so basically, oh wait, it's working. Basically, this part of the curve, you are going to have high GDP, high prices, high employment. Rising imports is another problem. High GDP / price level. Rising imports. And those would be the two easy problems to talk about. And then when the actual curve is below the trend or below the potential in your negative output gap, which is here, you're going to have the opposite problem. Low GDP, low employment, but low prices, and you won't be buying much imports because you're in a recession, you're too poor to buy imports. So that's effectively how this is going to swing in terms of the macroeconomic objectives. The unsustainable idea is where you can get really advanced because, of course, notice what tends to happen when you get into a really big positive output gap. It just precipitates your inevitable doom, right? So every positive output gap, it gets too big, whoop, you seem to head straight back down. So this is where this sort of unsustainability argument comes in, which I do really love. So what I would also potentially encourage you guys to think of if this didn't become immediately clear is the Keynesian, oh no, let's up again. Keynesian LRAS curve. Now the actual output line is kind of, you can think of this as a result as demand fluctuating between the elastic and inelastic points of the curve over time, right? So when the economy is going through a boom phase, confidence is high, spending is high, investment is high, you get up here with your high prices and your near full employment, blah, blah, blah. And then in the negative output gap, the AD is really low and you have your unemployment, blah, blah, blah. So that's another way to sort of simply think about what's going on and what the problems of the positive output gap would be. It's just to link it to the macro objectives. So in the case of diagrams, we cannot use this diagram to show a positive output gap. So that can't be used for this question. It's just to help you understand why inflation is high here and low at the recession. So the diagram I would probably use to explain some of the problems here, I think this fits in really nicely with Yash's suggestion of talking about the sustainability of the output gap, is the classical positive output gap diagram I showed you guys. And what I would stress here is that the short run price level might be at PL1, but notice the long run equilibrium is here at PL2, where AD meets not short run aggregate supply, but long run aggregate supply. So the long run equilibrium is PL2, and that suggests that this positive output gap is going to be inflationary in the long run. You could think of that as the excess demand for factors of production that the economy doesn't have, right? YFE is your maximum. That's the maximum output you can get with all your factors of production employed. Remember, we said you can only get beyond that by overworking your factors of production. So this extra demand for factors of production that you don't have is going to push up prices. If you want to go even more complete, you could say that the depreciation of worker skill or productivity or capital as you overuse your labor force and capital stock is going to increase costs, and that's going to over time shift the short run equilibrium back up to PL2 as well. So this very, very nicely shows the problem of inflation. And the other problem can be linked to with this diagram as well, because your positive output gap means you have very high income. And what's going to happen to import spending? You have very high income. Answer in the chat. Last one for today. Good. Nyati Mira straight in there. Yes. So it's going to be high import spending as well when you've got a positive output gap because your income is very high. So that's your two typical problems. But I do love what Yas was suggesting. And I think if I personally were to write this, I would expand a lot into the economic cycle idea and the fact that the big problem with having too high a positive output gap, as we discussed when we did this, is that it effectively creates the conditions for future contraction.